Owners/employees of stores that sell alcohol. Can you tell when a kid has a fake id? Funniest fake stories. Worked at a beverage drive-thru in the office taking my break. A coworker is a younger guy trying to buy beer. She looks at the id and it was mine. My car was broken into months before and had my wallet stolen. He sped off, but our security cameras got his license plate. Ended up being charged with receiving stolen property. For a short time, after I got out of the military, I worked for a major chain of convenience stores. I worked the overpass shift and my store was located in a predominantly Hispanic part of town. One night this kid comes in. He was clean cut and handsome, average height and build, but couldn't have been more than 14. He puts up a couple 18 packs and slaps down his id. I look at his id, I look at him, and I look back at his id. This isn't you. Yes, that's me. I'm looking at this id the kid gives, and the picture is of a very rough looking Mexican with long hair and neck tattoos that had to be at least 45. I mean, this fool was ugly and looked mean as snake. He made Danny Trejo look like a Disney princess. So I tell him sorry, but no way is the guy in front of me and the guy on the id the same person, and I put the beer back behind the counter. Then he asks for his id back, and I have to tell him no, we have to confiscate it, but we'll release it to its proper owner. The kid panics and leaves. About an hour later, a very angry, very tall and very ugly Mexican with neck tattoos walks in, dragging my young friend, who was quite distraught, by the collar. It was late, and I was alone, and wasn't sure what to expect, so I put one hand on the panic button. They walk up to the counter and the big ugly one says, "My idiot nephew here says that his idiot friends talked him into stealing my id so he could buy them beer. As you can tell, we don't look much alike." No, not really. I already had his id out and slid it across the counter. He thanks me and then tells his nephew to apologize for being an idiot, which he does. I don't know what happened to him after that, but I never saw him in my store again. His uncle though became one of my late night regulars and was actually a super nice guy. I used to know a guy who had that Webster-like disease. Damn brain won't spit out the name of it. So basically at 30 he still looked 10. After being refused and laughed at by an attendant, I purchased some beer for him and nearly got arrested for it. It probably didn't help that I couldn't stop laughing at the cop/situation. Edit. Hysterically laughing at cops rarely end well for me. They appear to dislike it for some reason. I have been a bouncer and bartender for over a decade now, and I've confiscated hundreds of fake ids. Several good stories. I once had a kid hand me an id, not fake, that belonged to a guy I grew up with. Like, played Little League, built a tree house together, grew up with. No other employee in town could have known it wasn't him, and he'd been drinking in bars with it for at least a year when I caught him. He was hands down the most bummed out of anyone I've taken a fake from. Another kid actually turned himself into the cops. He gave me a fake id, one he bought online. It took me half a second to spot it, and I put it in my back pocket and told him to fuck off. Usually, I kept all the fakes I caught. I only bothered the cops if the person refused to leave because it was a hassle and slowed down business. Anyway, an hour or so after he left, the plainclothes officers who always worked the bar district, whom I saw every single Friday and Saturday night for about 3 years, tapped me on the shoulder. I step off to the side and the sergeant asks me if I'd taken any fakes recently. I said sure, and handed over the kid's bogus id. They looked at it and started laughing. I asked what the joke was. They told me the kid had actually called the police station and asked them to send an officer to get the id back. You're kidding me, right? No, he's standing outside on the sidewalk waiting for us. I followed them outside. The cops held up the id. Is this it? Yeah, that's it. He took it from me. Good. Turn around and put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. I just stood there shaking my head. Instead of being out a $25 fake id, the kid got to spend the night in jail. Womp womp. I've got a few more, but you guys probably don't care. When I was younger, maybe 18, I had a fake id that I used all the time. Anyway, I was from a small town in Indiana and always went to the same liquor store. After going a few times, the owner knew me and stopped asking for my id. Well, once I turned 21, I went and got my driver's license renewed and it obviously had my real name and birthday. The weekend after I got the real it, I went to that same liquor store to buy booze, but the owner wasn't behind the counter. When the attendant asked me for my ID, I handed over the fresh new legal driver's license. It must have just been a bad luck Brian kinda day for me, because as soon as the attendant checked the ID, the owner came out of the back room and said no need to card him, he's been coming in 4 years. Confused, the attendant said it says here he turned 21 on Tuesday. Needless to say the owner was pissed, and I was never allowed back there. I got accused of having a fake ID once. I was about 24 over 25 and had just gotten off work, so I was in a suit and tie. I went to Nick's Pizza Pub in Crystal Lake, Illinois and sat down at the bar and ordered a beer. The bartender asked for my ID. It was okay, I still get carded all the time, and I'm now in my mid-30s, and I handed her my driver license. She looked it over for a minute and asked if I had another form of it. I hand her over my stated, I always carry it, because I used to get a lot of tickets and still wanted to be able to go out. She looked at mine for a second and told me to hold on a second and went into the back room. She came out a minute later and told me that they were taking my driver's license and it because they were fake and I should leave before they call the cops. I told them that they had my license and I needed that to drive, and if they take my property, that is theft. She looked at me for a bit and told me fine, we're calling the cops. I was like good, I'll call the cops. A few minutes later, she comes back, throws my ID and license back at me and tells me to leave. I wait for the cops to come. I wanted them to look over my ID to make sure there was nothing wrong with it. The cops come, look at my ID and are like, what's the problem? These are real. Apparently that bar had just had some sort of training on how to spot a fake ID and my license, and it were cut a fraction of an inch crooked. I have never gone back there and tell everyone I meet not to go there. Stupid people. Was working a wedding. Some obnoxious 16-year-old kept trying to get drinks from the bar. He succeeded when people would get them for him, but that wasn't my problem in an open bar wedding. In any case, he shows me some crusty health card which I thought was either fake or wasn't him, and was beat up pretty badly. Finally, after he makes some long speech to me, I said fine. I'll serve you 1 drink per hour, that's it. He was overjoyed. I went out the back and filled a rum bottle up with water, put a pourer on it, brought it out. Told him he was drinking rum and cokes all night at my discretion. He smiled and nodded enthusiastically. I gave him his glass of coke and proceeded to give him about 4 to 5 more throughout the night. He sipped them real slow and started acting pretty stupid by the end. I never had the heart to tell him he was sober as a judge. A friend of mine used to make fake IDs for a few of us when we were about 17 or 18. We were going to the USA for the summer around that time. He spent about 2 months previous to going, working on making the perfect fake for himself. On the plane over he showed me his handiwork, beaming with pride. I had to admit it was perfect, right down to his actual date of birth. When I was 17, one of my friends had a fake ID. Actually, an older friend had given her an old driver's license. The girl the license belonged to was probably 30 lbs. Heavier than my friend, wore glasses, and had the cheesiest smile ever, so I never quite understood how she got away with using the fake. On one occasion, I ended up going into a liquor store with her. She had a pair of reading glasses similar to those the girl wore in the ID photo. When she was checking out, the cashier looked back and forth between the ID and my friend, said, "Wow, you don't even look like this picture anymore." My friend smiled a cheesy smile like the one on the ID, said thanks, I've lost a lot of weight. I feel great. And we went on our merry way, tequila in hand. I was in a liquor store and watched a soldier in full fatigues and matching name tags and appropriate patches get it and rejected for being underage. I sat my booze down and walked out after the guy, caught him in the parking lot and asked him to give me his money and I'd buy for him. Went back in, picked up my booze and what he had told me, and the cashier gave me the eye of death, but sold it all to me. Went back out and gave the soldier his beer. If you're responsible enough to carry a gun, kill people, die for your country and vote in its leadership, shit, you're responsible enough for a beer. This kid walks in and comes up to my register. He asks if we carry blunt wrap. Yeah, but you gotta get it from the manager's register. Basically a raised platform with an office in back and all the tobacco, condoms, and other shoplifting favorites. The managers hung out up there and sold lotto and cigs. He goes, cool. So do they check kids? Me, well they certainly will now. Him, fuck. Then he leaves. Tip to the kids looking for flavored blunts. Don't ask an employee whether or not the store usually checks kids. Dead giveaway. Generally, you can tell by mannerisms. Even if they have a fake, there's normally a tell. It's like a bad poker face. They try to act hyper mature and in effect end up acting like a kid trying to buy booze. I used to franchise a C-store for 3+ years, and you'd be amazed at the fakes we'd see. I had a 17-year-old white kid hand me an ID for a 22-year-old Spanish guy named Pablo. I kid you not. Sorry, Pablo. No beer for you. I was working in a convenience store in Canada in a city where I literally only knew one guy, Zach. Someone came in with Zach's ID. Of course I didn't sell it to him. I gave the ID back out of habit though. 2 weeks later a different guy came in with Zach's ID. I laughed and said I couldn't sell it to the guy and kept the ID. The guy said, oh man, someone even warned me it wouldn't work on you. I stood there and thought then, why the fuck would you even try it? Right before I turned 18 my parents retired from their 9-5s and bought a franchise 7-Eleven. I spent a few years working for them, as well as nightclub security, and I learned a lot about how to spot fakes. The number one thing I'd do when I wasn't sure was ask when they graduated high school. If they were underage, they'd usually be off by 3 to 4 years. You have to give a little leeway with that. Sometimes I'd ask them for their driver's license number. If they knew it, I'd have to think twice, because who the fuck knows their DLash? Last, check the back. Sometimes fake ID makers get real lazy on the backside of the ID. I'd probably get 3 to 4 fakes per week. If I was feeling like a dick, I'd keep the ID. If I was feeling like less of a dick, I'd frisbee that shit towards the door. I used to glue the ones I kept to the wall until 7-Eleven corporate said that was unprofessional. Funniest fake ID story. In 2007 I was working nights at an after hours nightclub, and on the way to work I stopped by the parents' store to pick up cigs. I stepped up to the register right as a group of 4 decent looking obviously not 21 girls come in. They each pick up a 30 pack and bring it up to the register. After I check out, they get ready to get rung up, and I politely ask for all of their IDs. After establishing that I work there, they fork them over. I laugh at how bad they are and politely inform them that I'm not selling them alcohol. I pocket all 4 IDs and walk outside. They come stomping out, standing behind my car, so I can't leave, furiously screaming at me. They want their goddamn IDs back. I tell them to take it up with the cops when out of nowhere this dude wearing a Missouri ATF jacket walks up and asks me if I was going to buy them alcohol. I tell him that I work there. I just took their fakes and they're mad. That's when I realize they were doing undercover buying stings. He looks at me and goes, what IDs? Turns out that they were just supposed to say sorry, we don't have IDs. They went a little rogue on their underage buying scheme. Gave him the IDs, and he wrote them all up for some ID related law. If I absolutely 100% knew the person was underage, I would ring up the entire order, wait for them to count all of their change, etc, and then bag their items acting as oblivious as possible. I would then ask for their ID, just as they thought they were out of the woods. The look on their faces, their eyes, to give something, and then take it away. So deliciously evil. I used my brother's old driver's license. He was about 5 years older, so I only went to Asian supermarkets to purchase alcohol. To Asian people, all Caucasians look alike. Worked every time. It's easy. Look at the eyebrows, the nose, the mouth, etc. The pub I used to work at had about 3,000 people through a night. One night we confiscated 14 fake IDs. It was funny, because after these kids have waited like an hour in the line, and we figure out they aren't 18, we take their ID then yell out really loud, so the whole line can hear, hey everyone, this kid's only 17. Let's laugh at him, because he's too young to drink. And so all 200 people in the line would laugh at them. Classics gag. But to make up for being cunts, we had a ginger friendly policy where no ginger ever had to line up. They always got to cut the queue and take a friend with them. In high school I worked as a cashier at a major grocery chain in Texas. My store closed at midnight, and on this particular shift I was the last checker on duty. At around 10 minutes to close I see this 6'1" bro dude walk towards my register with a jug of Gallo wine. He then proceeds to hand me the most utterly fake looking Texas ad I have ever seen. The more hilarious thing was, I had seen this dumbass on the Tonight Show with Jay Leno the week before. He was featured on an edition of Jaywalking and was introduced as in high school and from my hometown. Needless to say, this dude wasn't the sharpest tool in the shed. I think I just chuckled to myself by this point and said, "Man, this is not your name," and told him to fuck off. He protested and I replied, "I literally saw you on Jay Leno last week. I know you go to blank high school, and that is the worst fake it I've ever seen. I'm sure he's an attorney now or in politics."